Bon dia a tots vostès. Buenos días a todos. Good morning, everyone. We can start up this act. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the opening ceremony of this Congress on the development of the INSPIRE Directive, as you know very well, including the Spanish Spatial Data Infrastructure Conference. And now I can advance to all of you that we have a great attendance until 1 hour ago with more than 1,100 attendees. Thank you. Let me introduce our presidency, Honorable Minister of Territory and Sustainability of the Catalan government, European authorities, Spanish government authorities. It's a great satisfaction and a big responsibility for the Institut Cartogràfic i Geològic de Catalunya and the Instituto Geográfico de España as the local organizers of this 10th INSPIRE conference to give to you the warmest welcome to Barcelona for this stimulating working week and also, why not, of ludic staying in our Mediterranean city. You are all welcome. Let me introduce a very short video, 3 minutes, with the principal parameters of the Congress. The video, please. Thank you. Allow me to make a short reflection. We are right in the middle of the INSPIRE 2010-2020 directive implementation period. We are all committed in its execution, and we are moving the entire geoinformation of the European continent towards subsidiarity and interoperability, facing huge difficulties. We must remember that Spain, for instance, has completed the entire National Geographical Information conversion to the European Terrestrial Reference System 1989, after 25 years of continued effort. The European Terrestrial Reference System is not a technicality only, it is more than a technical infrastructure. It is also the real root of geoinformation of Europe, and a good example of 25 years of continuous and fruitful work, as well as a measure of the dimension of time necessary to carry out a complex project with complex implementation. To make complex things requires time. Europe is part of our lives as citizens, and now is an indissoluble part of our social DNA. And geoinformation is part of the European life. This means that we need to insert in our everyday life, and particularly in our public administrations, let me underline, in our public administrations, the inspired information. This is the challenge pending, inserting the 34 chapters of geoinformation of the directive in the European administrative life, as well as in the Spanish and Catalan administration. This is our goal, and is why we work every day. Now, I would like to introduce to you Professor Oriol Nel, full professor from the Geography Department of the Autonomous University of Barcelona. Professor Nel, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman, Executive Director of the European Environment Agency, Subsecretario de Estado del Ministerio de Fomento, Secretari del Departament de Territori i Sostenibilitat de la Generalitat de Catalunya, dear colleagues. Let me first of all thank the organizers for their kind invitation to participate in this event. It's for me a great pleasure to have the opportunity to address such a distinguished audience, and to do so in order to discuss such a timely and interesting issue as the implementation and development of the European spatial data infrastructure. We are just at the opening of the conference, and I would like to share with you some thoughts on the subject. Reflection that, as you will see, are based on the experience of the development and implementation of the Inspired initiative here in Catalonia, in which I had the opportunity to participate both as an academic and as a public servant. In particular, the idea I would like to convey is that, in my opinion, the development of the Inspired initiative certainly involved technological, economic, and administrative opportunities. But, dear colleagues, above all, in my mind, it provides the opportunity of building a new vision to represent and manage the European space. As we all know, Inspire is about efficiency in sharing spatial data at the European level, sharing geodata between public authorities at all levels of government, across borders, and with the public at large. We have gathered almost a decade of experience in the application of the Inspire Directive since its adoption in 2007. Along the way, we have learned many things about the measures required to address exchange, sharing, access, and use of interoperable spatial data and spatial data services across the various levels of government and across different sectors. The implementation of these measures has already entailed substantial changes, and if you want, substantial challenges as well, at the local, regional, national, and European level. I think that we can say that thanks to the leadership of the European institutions and the contribution of all the different stakeholders, we have traveled a significant part of the way towards the full implementation of the provisions of the directive. This implementation, as we know, must be completed by the year 2019, just 3 years from now. Proof of the progress achieved can be seen in the successive INSPIRE conference. The present conference, which Barcelona is so glad to host, is already the 10th. It has been preceded, as you know well, by the meetings held in Porto, Maribor, Rotterdam, Krakow, Edinburgh, Istanbul, Florence, Aalborg, and Lisbon. Throughout the journey, we have confirmed the extent to which the development and implementation of the provisions contained in the INSPIRE directive are fundamental to the knowledge of the European space, economic development, and environmental policies. In the coming days, we've just seen in the video, you will be discussing each of these issues in the 3 areas of the symposium: INSPIRE for thematic networks, for digital economy, and for environment. All this is extremely important. But as T.S. Eliot warned us, we have to be aware not to confuse wisdom with knowledge, and knowledge with information. And we must avoid as well the temptation to try to solve the problems of life solely in terms of engineering. This is why, in my opinion, for our efforts to succeed, it is essential to remember that INSPIRE is not only a set of technical prescriptions and norms. INSPIRE should be, first and foremost, a tool for the advancement of the European project. The spatial European vision, the spatial data infrastructure, must be an instrument for building up a new European vision, a requirement for Europe to become a collective project and a political subject in this open and integrated world. This is so because any community wishing to become a political subject and a collective project needs to represent itself and to represent the world. Let me to elaborate a little bit on this by using the example of Catalonia, an old and resilient country with a long tradition of mapping. Any map, any spatial data set, if you want to put it that way, is primarily a tool to represent the world and to represent oneself in the world. Any community that wants to exist on the world scene needs these tools. The history of Catalan cartography provides good examples of this. If you visit the National Library of France, for example, you might consult the so-called Atlas Català, drawn in 1375 by a family of Majorcan cartographers, Abraham and Jafú de Cresques. The map was commissioned by the Catalan royal family as a gift to the King of France. It represents what at that time was the world seen from our part of Europe and incorporates elements that could be known only through contributions from Arab, Christian, and Jewish cultures. Any community that wants to exist has the need to be represented, to represent the world, and it does so with contributions from all sources and cultures. Europe today is no exception, and INSPIRE, with its 34 layers of georeference information, is a good example of this. Now, the representation of the space serves not only to position, to describe, and to identify. It also serves to relate to others. The medieval navigation cards are a good example of it. The work of Jaume Olivas, to put another example, a cartographer working in Barcelona in 1575, is an excellent proof of this. You might see this, what we call portulà. Today, the representation of economic and information networks is a much more complex exercise. which challenges the principles of Euclidean geometry that medieval mapmakers struggled so much to master, isn't it? But the purpose is the same. Spatial information has yet another function. It serves not only to represent the present, but to shape the future. So every map always contains a project, implicit or explicit. Every map can be considered a tool of government. Allow me to continue with the Catalan example, in this case, Barcelona. In 1868, the engineer Ildefons Cerdà drew the topographic map of Barcelona. It was the first step towards projecting the expansion of the city. The Eixample, which you all will certainly visit these days. Cerdà's design allowed the city to make a prodigious leap in scale and multiply its surface area by 13. Today's Barcelona is, in a good measure, the result of the implementation of Cerdà's project. A map is an instrument of government. Without Cerdà's map, Barcelona would be a completely different city. This is why a map can be capable not only to describe reality, but also of foreshadowing the future, as the political representatives who are with us this morning, in particular the director of the European Environmental Agency, could confirm. Therefore, for any political subject to exist, and Europe is already a subject in the world's political sphere, must be able to represent itself, represent the world, and govern its own territory. The risks of not doing so are obvious. Let us look at this military map of Catalonia drawn in the 17th century. It represents our country inverted with the north at the bottom of the map. It's not by any casualty. It's a map designed from outside, a map designed for conquest. Every map serves the interest of those who produce it. Today, Europe is fortunately far from having to face the military risk that characterized the history of the continent during the last 100 years, but having our own capacity to capture and represent spatial information continues to be an essential requirement for self-government, as the European Galileo project clearly exemplifies. The challenges that need to be addressed at every level of scale in order to build the European spatial data system are far from negligible. Let me briefly explain how we have tried to solve them here in Catalonia, so you will have a little taste of the current status in our country of the subject discussed in the conference. And with this, Mr. Chairman, I will end. In fact, we started to adapt our legislation to the principles of INSPIRE in the year 2005, even before the directive was formally adopted by the European Parliament. To achieve this goal, the work undertaken by the Cartogràfic Institute of Catalonia was instrumental. The Institute is an institution that was created in 1981, as soon as Catalonia regained its power to self-government after the end of General Franco's dictatorship. The Cartogràfic Institute, as you know, is precisely the institution responsible for the organization of this conference. The procedure adopted was the creation of a cartographic register of Catalonia, which requires that all mapping and spatial information produced in Catalonia must be registered in order to acquire official status. Therefore, if you want to create a map or to build up a spatial data system and you want this to be used for legal purposes, say for urban planning or for environmental management, you must inscribe it in the register. To be inscribed, all spatial information must comply with certain norms and standards, which precisely those that ensure interoperability at European level, in accordance with the requirements of INSPIRE. We have even created a commission to adapt our production of cartography to the norms and standards of Spatial. This is the Comissió Cartogràfica de Catalunya, composed of all the institutions that produce cartography in our country. In addition, to ensure that we will have all necessary data sets and that they will adequately cover all of Catalonia's territory, in 2010, our government approved a cartographic plan for Catalonia, which is in advanced state of implementation. Finally, in order to ensure that all stakeholders have access to spatial information, we have created our Spatial Data Infrastructure of Catalonia, la infraestructura de dades espacials de Catalunya, a system of spatial metadata. Cartographic register, norms and standards, coordinating commission, cartographic plan, and spatial data infrastructure of Catalonia. These are the elements that we are using for the implementation of the INSPIRE initiative. It would be misleading, dear colleagues, to affirm that this process has been carried out without any problem. On the contrary, we are convinced that many of you in your respective countries and regions are much more advanced than us in adapting to the principle of INSPIRE. Far from discouraging us, however, this is a stimulus to carry on with endeavor. I will leave it here, wishing you a fruitful conference and a pleasant stay in Barcelona. Thank you very much for your attention.
And let me introduce to you Dr. Joanna Drake, Deputy Director-General of the Directorate-General Environment European Commission. Please, Dr. Drake.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to say thank you to our host for hosting us in such a beautiful and sunny city, Barcelona. I would like to say thanks to our partners and friends from the Institut Cartogràfic i Geològic de Catalunya. They have been really great in collaborating with us in organizing this event. Also to the Spanish government for the support, and to all public and private sponsors for their interest in making this event possible. Of course, I cannot forget you out of the equation for showing up so numerously for this conference. So thank you very much for your support and your continued interest. We have more than 1,000 participants today, and they're all coming from different parts, from government, different levels, from agencies, from institutions, from the private sector and the media. And this must be one of the biggest events which DG Environment, my DG, co-organizes. So why are we here? We have already been speaking and hearing the previous speakers talk about the context of INSPIRE, as we like to call it in the acronym, which by now is a household name, although I'm not sure how much of a household name it is beyond these quarters here, and maybe this is one of the key messages I want to pass on, that I think it needs to be a little bit more well-known. But it is an infrastructure, it is a structure for spatial information, which has now gone into its 10th year. And of course, we are not talking here about maybe the sexier subjects of the environment, like biodiversity and cleaner air and cleaner water, which of course are very, very important for the quality of life of European citizens. It is not so much something that every citizen would know about, and I don't expect that every morning European citizens get out of their bed and think about INSPIRE. But I believe that the information, the knowledge, there was the play on words by the professor just before me, and I would say the intelligence that INSPIRE actually produces, and also the potential for even a bigger use of this intelligence for the benefits of our citizens should be more widely spread and widely well known. Why? because more and more we are realizing its tremendous importance for anything that's to do with environmental legislation, with implementation of that legislation on the ground. And the more we are informed, smartly informed, intelligently informed, the more intelligence we actually exude out of all this exercise, I think the more and the better quality of life we have. And this is why we are here today. We are also here today to remind ourselves that even if there's a lot being produced already, and there's a lot of scope, the cooperation that has already been exploited, we believe that there can be much more. Another thing that I would like to point out today, and I think this is really important to put it in the context, the political context in which we operate as European Commission in general, not only DG Environment. We are part of a bigger commission. We are part of a bigger reality called the European Union. And the European Union is even part of the bigger reality, which is called Europe as a continent, and of course the global reality. And in that context, maybe the political discourse and the linking up to political objectives should not go amiss. And I'd like to refer here immediately to what our President Jean-Claude Juncker, last week on the 14th of September, when he presented the now quite well-known State of the European Union speech. He highlighted that Europe should be given 3 new tags, as it were. And he said, even if this is nothing really new, but it's good, I think that he actually put these tags that everybody understands, very clear, for everybody to remember why Europe is there and what we're trying to achieve with the help and cooperation of everybody on a daily basis. And he said, Europe is there to protect, to empower, and to defend. And all this very much relates to the topics of today's conference. And of course, I can see your mind saying, what is she talking about? What has President Juncker and Europe that protects, empowers, and defends to do with Inspire? Well, I would like to help you join those dots, because I think this is a common responsibility that we all have. We all have the responsibility, no matter how important we think our work is, to link to the concrete reality, if possible, of every citizen's life. This is why we do our work. And we have to communicate that very clearly on a daily basis, lest nobody forgets. So just to remind everybody, the State of the European Union speech is only a part of the process that we do every year. And the President of the Commission feels the responsibility as President to actually tell us, look, this is where we are with the achievements or non-achievements of the European Union. And of course, he reminds us of just a few years back, just a couple of years, nearly 3 now, when he took office and he said, these are my 10 priorities. And he said, on the 14th of September, he said, okay, these are my 10 priorities, I'll remind you all, and let me tell you what sort of progress we have achieved. I think this is how we all operate, don't we, in our daily lives. We all make lists, even shopping lists, and then we just, tick them off if we've bought it from the supermarket or if we have delivered on our daily reminders. So this is also what the President of the European Commission does. And priority number 1, may I remind you all, is a new boost for jobs, growth, and investment. This includes, of course, things that we are already doing in DG Environment, and the whole of the Commission is committed to it, and that is the circular economy package, which was adopted last year in December. There's been a follow-up action plan also drawn up, and also there has been the modernization and simplification of the common agricultural policy. Why? Because we need it to feed into what we all agree is important for this planet, and that is the Sustainable Development Goals, which have been, very much on a large global stage last year, approved at the United Nations in New York. So how does Inspire, what we are all doing together with you, link up to this? And it links up because there is a role for Inspire within the circular economy. And what's the circular economy about? It's about making sure that products, materials, resources are used, reused for as long as possible, and that waste is minimalized. And we are in Spain. And I'd like to talk about one very critical resource issue here in Spain, which is groundwater, just to link it to something very concrete. Groundwater is under increasing pressure everywhere in Europe, I would say worldwide, both in terms of quantity and also quality. And there have been a wide range of actors which have an impact on the water cycle, and also data information needs to be shared among them. So, probably by now you're already seeing some link. And Inspire is there, even if I am maybe preaching to the converted, but I think it is good that sometimes we just take a bit of a check about exactly what we're on about and why we are working towards, and maybe in the hope that it will reinvigorate our energies. So Inspire, as I was saying, is designed to facilitate such sharing as it covers data, for instance, on geology, with the location and the quality of underground water reserves, on the location and the quality of our surface waters, on the utility networks such as pipelines, or the location and operation of water extraction points and wastewater treatment plants, or even on water consumption, a big issue as well, where such information can also be tied to the location of buildings, for instance, many governmental services, agricultural activities, and those of industry. But also, Inspire features data on the location of a wide range of sources of possible pollution affecting the quality of our groundwater. And it also provides data on meteorological and atmospheric conditions, which in our era of changing climate are so important to monitor for the water cycle. Of course, these are just an indication. This is just an indication of why Inspire is so much important in order to feed into the various, I would say, fountains of intelligence that we need in order to make good policies and in order to produce what we could produce in terms of information on what I mentioned before, circular economy, the common agricultural policy, etc. But this is, as I said, just a sample, just to illustrate to you where we could actually contribute to much more of a, I would say, transitional, but it has to be a real concrete and evolutionary one towards a circular economy. And for example, with the information on the location and operation of landfills and waste processing facilities, just to name a few. But let us now have a look at another priority, and that's priority number 2 of the Juncker Commission. And the Juncker Commission 3 years ago said, my second priority is to make sure that there is a connected digital single market. We've known about the single market for more than 50 years now, nearly 60. But more and more, our market, rather than just the physical exchange of trade and goods and services, we're talking about a virtual reality and a digital one. And Inspire also has a key role here. And it can deliver concretely, I would say, to this strategy. For example, it supports the free data and free movement of data in the European Union, as foreseen under the European Free Flow of Data Initiative. It contributes towards its standards and interoperability arrangements to digital services that cross borders, and it has demonstrated its value for a wide range of e-government services through which governments, businesses, and citizens interact. I think we're all in search of actually being very relevant for everyday's lives, for citizens' everyday's lives, not only their life, but also their working life. and their social life. And I think this is a direct, if you think of it this way, it's a really direct input into that stream. Third priority, a resilient energy union with a forward-looking climate change policy. Quite a mouthful there, but it is an ambitious transformation that needs to take. And Europe really is holding on to being a credible world leader in renewable energies, but not only that, also in climate change. And of course, several Inspire data themes also support both these streams. For example, several Inspire data themes are useful to find the best location for renewable energy facilities like wind farms, solar power plants, or geothermal energy facilities, to operate them and to help us to assess their environmental impacts. Inspire data also covers land use and land cover and can help us to monitor changes more efficiently, which again is an important thing to do for bioenergy programs and carbon sequestration and emissions. Yet another example, maybe closer to home, transport. Intelligent Transport Systems Directive already recommends the use of Inspire, and several Inspire data themes can help in reducing transport emissions. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Last but not least, when talking about climate change adaptation, Inspire can help us where we need to strengthen the resilience of our communities to prepare and respond to climate change-driven hazards and disasters. What about priority number 4? A deeper and fairer internal market with a strengthened industrial base. We can see the follow-up to the space strategy here for Europe. There are 2 European flagship programs already referred to some extent before me, and that is Copernicus, which is the Earth observation project, and the Galileo for global positioning. These are a natural intersect, I would say, with Inspire. These 2 programs complement each other. Copernicus, through its massive flow of big data from space as a contributor to information, and Galileo for a wide range of applications. In both cases, Inspire data is used. For instance, for more sustainable precision agriculture, where satellite observations and positioning data is combined with several data themes of Inspire, like soil, slopes, and meteorological. Or to better monitor, manage, and protect our oceans, on which Copernicus delivers a wealth of unique data. We can combine this data with several Inspire data themes covering, for example, emissions and pollution in our rivers, or our observations on the marine environment, such as the quality of our bathing water or the status of our fish stocks under pressure. Last but not least, let me touch upon the priority number 10. This sounds a little bit maybe out there. A union of democratic change. Now, how is Inspire contributing to that? Well, maybe we can start with good governance, because actually Inspire is about, as we said, information, knowledge, wisdom, intelligence, and it has, of course, there ingrained, embedded aspects of transparency, compliance assurance, and participation. And it is with great interest that I saw in this year's conference program the important contributions and discussions on citizens' observatories and volunteered information, a direct link to citizens themselves who might themselves want to also partake of this exciting world. These initiatives are not only paving the way to make precious information collected by citizens themselves available also through Inspire, but they also empower citizens to address environmental issues, such as informing on illegal waste dumps or, for instance, invasive alien species, but not only, of course. They stimulate the interaction with public authorities, who in turn can benefit from citizen science for policy making and implementation. So, if you ever doubted, you might by now maybe be convinced that what you are doing has a real direct impact, and potentially much more, actually, in the quality of life and how citizens live, and what sort of environment and what sort of world and planet we are leaving behind for the generations to come. I hope I have somehow helped you to join these dots, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that whatever we are doing, whatever circles we're in, whatever expertise we have, however well we can speak about our subject and the subject matter that we are really competent in, we cannot lose sight of what relevance what we are doing has to the common citizens, to the good governance in member states, and also to the inspiration that you can provide for better policy making for European and global institutions. So, with great pleasure, I see that many of the priorities I've just outlined are well reflected in the more than 200 presentations and over 30 workshops and plenary sessions of this conference over these next few days. It is indeed encouraging to see the participations and contributions of so many key stakeholders. We welcome here today mapping agencies, geological services, meteorological services, and many organizations managing environmental data. We have the participation and support of several commissioned services, and again, to my great pleasure, the participation of international organizations and initiatives of the World Bank, the United Nations, Food and Agriculture Organization, and the United Nations Committee on Global Geographic Information Management. Most importantly, I appreciate the participation of stakeholders from local, regional, and national contexts, where, let us not forget, this INSPIRE is being continuously implemented. Ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude, I would like to thank the Member States for their immense efforts already carried out, and for also believing in this project, and therefore working with us in the Commission and with the European Environmental Agency to put this digital infrastructure together since 2007. Its goals, as I have tried to make clear, are still as pertinent as ever, no doubt about that. I submit that they need to be communicated perhaps more often and clearer for common people like myself to understand. And a number of challenges lie ahead. In the past 9 years, the implementation of INSPIRE has gone a long way. There is still much more to do to make it fully operational in a 2020 horizon. This conference is, in that respect, a milestone and also a key contribution to this endeavor. Let me therefore wish you a successful, meaningful, and productive conference in this regard, with many fruitful discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Drake, and let me introduce our next speaker, Professor Hans Bruyninckx, which is the Executive Director of the European Environment Agency. Please, Professor Bruyninckx.
Thank you, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, or should I say INSPIRE community, it's a great pleasure to present some of the work of the European Environment Agency as it relates to the INSPIRE undertaking, which we are jointly attached to. But first of all, I would like to go back to the first map that Professor Nello showed, and he said that every map has a political meaning and is shaping the future. I have to say that Florence was not on the map. I don't know what it means for the future of Florence. I would say that this community, with all its intelligence, will probably have to work on allocating Florence on the map of all the previous conferences. But putting this aside, I think if you look at the key mission of the European Environment Agency, which is to provide relevant, reliable, targeted and timely information to policymakers, it is clear that what INSPIRE is doing can actually contribute to the reliability of data, to the targeted nature of data and information, and to timeliness of bringing this data to policymakers. And I think that is for us the key basis on which we engage in the INSPIRE process. And we do this, of course, as you know, not only for the European member states, but for the whole European subcontinent. We work with 39 countries, and when I say with 39 countries, it also means literally with the countries through our IONET network, which links us in a unique way to about 250 institutions in all the European member states. And all that we do in the agency is in support of the policies, environment and climate policies of the EU. And without going through all the goals of these policies, I think they are well captured in a future-oriented perspective in the vision of the 7th Environmental Action Programme. And in essence, it says that by 2050, we will live well within the limits of the planet. And in order to do that, we have to focus on 3 fundamental transitions in society and economy. And that is, we need to go from a linear model of production and consumption to a circular economy, and Joanna Drake addressed this already. We need to protect natural resources and biodiversity in a much more fundamental way instead of continuing to degrade and deplete it. And we need to go from high carbon to low carbon. So the real question for us is, what can a more and better integrated spatial data infrastructure bring to understand these challenges better, and how can we use that then to bring better messages to policymakers, because that is the goal of the agency. In essence, we frame our task for the future as follows. If you want to live well within the limits of the planet means the ecosystems. Those are the boundary conditions within which we will have to work on socio-technical systems. And the 4 key systems that we focus on, and that are also the focus of many European policies towards the future, are the energy system, where we have the climate and energy package and the 2030-2050 trajectory, the food and agricultural system, where Joanna Drake mentioned the CAP already, the mobility and transport system, and of course also the urban environment. And it's rather clear and obvious that all those systems have rather strong spatially defined characteristics, and so to understand them better within the limits of that planet, we would benefit from better spatial data infrastructure. The way in which we organize our knowledge in the European Environment Agency is along what we call the MDIAK chain. So we start from often in situ monitoring or surveys, or increasingly also Copernicus satellite observations. Yeah? And from that we produce data. And as this community knows very well, to produce from monitoring solid data sets that can be used is quite substantial work. So we devote a lot of attention together with the member countries and our environmental topic centers, European topic centers, in doing quality checks and quality assurance. And from that we produce indicators and information. And that is very useful in and of itself. But I think the real challenge is on that MDI basis to produce assessments and understanding. Because by now we all know that there is no shortage of data and information. I mean, we are overwhelmed by data and information from traditional sources, from new sources like satellites, and also increasingly from non-traditional sources like GPSs that are used in cars, or citizen observation, or smartphones. So the real challenge is not more data. We don't need more noise, we need better sound. And so the real challenge will be, what can INSPIRE contribute to producing better sound instead of producing more data and noise, one could say. And of course, that type of assessment and knowledge we then have to translate to policymakers at all levels. The framing that is used in the 70 AP and in the two key, I would say, economic translations at the European level, the low-carbon economy and the circular economy, is also driving us to build a knowledge base towards what we call our SOER 2020, State and Outlook of the Environment. We want to be ready by 2020 with a better understanding of how these things systemically interact. And the low-carbon economy is, of course, framed as a project of decarbonization of the economy, and we focus on carbon or greenhouse gases and how we can reduce those. The circular economy is very much about resource efficiency and keeping the value of resources in the economy, and we focus on materials. By now we know, based on the work of the IPCC and the International Resource Panel and science, that those two are intimately connected. We will not reach 80 to 95% reductions in greenhouse gases if we don't create a circular economy, because the embedded carbon in the material cycle and material use is very large. So those two are connected. And of course the land component, which is very strong also in INSPIRE, is important. Think of the LULUCF debate, carbon sequestration, land as a resource, and the water cycle, also appearing in the INSPIRE undertaking. Here we are speaking about creating systemic resilience, an ecosystem that can deal with shocks. But of course those are linked to the systems that I already mentioned. The energy system, the food system, the mobility system, and the urban system, and those deliver us well-being. And what we increasingly understand from science is that it's not enough to understand each of these boxes. We are increasingly talking about the nexus issues. And so we will need data that can connect these systems, and since they are spatially defined and have a lot of spatial characteristics, we will need data that we can use to connect them also in specific locations and over time, and how these locations are changing when it relates to these different components. And we think the INSPIRE method can be of great assistance there, because it can help us to integrate our knowledge base. It can provide a spatial infrastructure for environmental data and how it connects to economic and social data. It can support the streamlining of e-reporting. It can give us more integrated data and analysis, and it can be used to standardize things so that we don't waste so much time on plowing through data systems and sets that don't speak to each other, because I think we need more time to create understanding and analysis, and if INSPIRE can be of assistance there, it would be great help. Just very quickly, in the interest of time, a few examples of how we have been using INSPIRE data in our reports. In the air quality report in 2015, which we did together with our ETC on air pollution and climate change mitigation, we for the first time used thematic data based on INSPIRE and the INSPIRE approach. And it allowed us to remodel with the member states the data flows that we use. And this has led to less duplication and more consistency across the data reporting. And we are now able, with less time and less effort, to create this type of maps. This is on PM10 in Europe. But again, this is the MDI, the monitoring, the data, and the indicator, because policymakers and people don't think in ppms or in micrograms. They think in other ways. So what is really interesting is, of course, if we can connect in these locations data on environmental health issues, on interactions with water, with ecosystems, with transport and mobility systems, which are often a driving force of air pollution and fine particulate matter, with industry, with agriculture. In other words, if we can use INSPIRE to better understand the meaning of the color of the dots on this type of map. A second example is what is our most quoted report every year. It's the bathing water report. Yeah? We get more press with the bathing water report than with any other report, because people want to know where their kids can safely swim, I guess. So what have we done there? Again, we are now working with more data availability in Europe, more than 21,000 sites. And what has the INSPIRE principle brought to the bathing water report? Well, first of all, the open access component, which is important, but also the reuse of this type of official data for other purposes. Member states developing mobile applications, the reuse by others of this data in a more frequent way to engage and communicate with citizens and local organizations. So INSPIRE is contributing again not only to better measuring, or not primarily to better measuring and better reporting, but to provide access and to build on the use of specific data. The 2016 Urban Sprawl report, and of course urban sprawl is by definition a very spatial process. We again made a report together with the Swiss Federal Office for the Environment, where the use of Copernicus data and INSPIRE approaches has led to more accuracy. And you see the 4 agglomerations here: Barcelona, Paris, the Benelux, and Dublin, where urban sprawl in all 4 of these cases is a very serious process that is, leading to land grabbing, biodiversity issues, water issues, and other elements. So we have more accuracy. We can also use the data now through INSPIRE to connect this sort of urban sprawl better to land use practice data, to infrastructure data, think of transport systems, and to environmental data. Interesting in this case, I think, is also the connection which we are making to the Copernicus data. And that leads me to the final example, where I would like to say that in the agency we really try to connect INSPIRE to Copernicus in situ activities. Under Copernicus, the agency has 3 main roles. One role is to, with the member countries, work on the in situ component. And this is a serious, heavy task. The other thing is that we are co-responsible for the land component. And many of you are connected also to the Korean land cover exercises. We hope that through connecting Copernicus and INSPIRE, we can come indeed with more timely data in this respect. And we are also a user of the services of Copernicus in atmospheric knowledge, climate knowledge, and also in marine knowledge. And we think that INSPIRE here can strengthen not only the data production, but also the in situ validation. So looking for co-benefits and the win-win in these 2 massive investments in Europe, we think is absolutely crucial. In conclusion, we think that the EEA can indeed benefit from contributing to INSPIRE because it has the potential to strengthen the link with member states and how we jointly build in Europe a data infrastructure. We think it can contribute to better access to high quality data, but probably more important, it can lead to better systemic approaches of understanding the big challenges for the next decades. It will not be by bringing separate information on micrograms and ppms and infrastructure to the table that we come to a transition of the transport and mobility system. It will not be by bringing silo data that is disconnected to the table that we will be able to work on a system that allows European cities to grow in sustainable ways. We will need to use the information that we have to connect the dots and to come up with more systemic analysis in support of systemic transitions. And we are convinced that by contributing and being a partner in the INSPIRE process, we can, from a user perspective and from a knowledge perspective, support the process both at the level of the EU, but also, and I want to end with that, at the level of the member states, because that is very much in the DNA of who we are as a European Environment Agency. We have several colleagues here this week that will be working with you on the different parts that we engage in Inspire. I was very happy to be able to address you and to share these comments with you. And of course, we are open for any questions or critical remarks if you would have them. So please approach us after the opening session. We would be happy to engage with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Bruyninckx. And now let me introduce Professor Mario Garcés Sanagustín, which is the Subsecretary of the Ministerio of Fomento of the Spanish government. Please.
Buenos días. Mis primeras palabras en español para agradecer la presencia de todos ustedes en este foro. Mis segundas palabras en catalán. Bon dia a tothom, benvinguts a Catalunya, a Espanya i a Barcelona. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Spain and to this wonderful city for participating in the Spire Conference 2016. It's a real pleasure for us to have Spain host for the first time the Spire Conference and to have Barcelona as its hosting city. I can only think of very few places in our country so suitable for this event. Barcelona is a first-rate international meeting point with an enabled geographic location, high-quality hotel and transport infrastructures, and an unbeatable cultural offering. I should all contribute to make the conference a success. I would therefore like to start by thanking the Inspire team for the confidence they have placed in Spain, in the Consejo Superior Geográfico, the High Geographic Council, as Inspire National Contact Point, and the Institut Cartogràfic y Geològic de Catalunya as organizer of this conference. In addition, I want to congratulate the Institut Cartogràfic y Geològic de Catalunya on the organization in support of this conference and for the Iberian Conference on Infrastructures for Spatial Information, as well as on the human and economic effort put into play to render both conferences possible. Among the competencies assigned by the Spanish government to the Ministry of Public Works stand those of proposing and executing the government policy in relation to transport infrastructures, overland, air, and maritime transport at the state level, and in connection with this conference, the promotion and management of the state services regarding astronomy, geodesy, geophysics, and cartography. By promoting transport infrastructures, the Ministry of Public Works promotes as well the development of economy and social activities in the public and private sectors, and consequently contributes to boost the creation of wealth and employment. However, our attention is focused today on a different but not less relevant infrastructure, the geographic information infrastructure, since the detailed knowledge and description of our territory enables us to efficiently plan and manage all our economic and social activities. It is important to emphasize that although promoting the development of a Spanish geographic information infrastructure is a fundamental mission of the National Geographic Institute, dependent of the Ministry of Public Works, this task also involves all the other Spanish public administrations, as well as the academic and business sectors. We can thus say that the development of the geographic information infrastructure of Spain is a collective work. Spain has actively participated in the development of the Spire Directive from its beginning in 2021, as well as in its regulatory implementation by way of the participation of representatives in the Spurs Committee, in the Spire Committee team, and later on in the Spire Maintenance and Implementation groups, as well as in the thematic working groups. The collaboration of the Institut Cartogràfic y Geològic de Catalunya has been very important in this task. You have 4 intensive days at work in which to share knowledge and experience regarding the thematic areas that can make up the core of this conference. In particular, the area related to the environment, main focus of this Inspire Conference 2016, Inspiring a Sustainable Environment. but not leaving aside other important sectors, such as the promotion of the digital economy on the basis of these technologies, or significant thematic areas like the management of the geospatial information itself, geology, the management of maritime resources, or the management of meteorological services. I therefore wish that you have a productive stay in Barcelona and that you enjoy, as I'm sure you will, this splendid city. The Spanish government, which I'm honored to represent, and the Generalitat de Catalunya are sparing no efforts to turn the results of the conference and your stay in Barcelona these 4 days into a milestone to be remembered in the future of the Spire conference. I reiterate my thanks to the Spire team and my congratulations of the Institut Cartogràfic y Geològic de Catalunya on their generous contribution to the development on the Spire Conference 2016, and especially I thank you for your presence and attention. Muchas gracias, moltes gràcies, thank you very much.
And finally, to close the opening ceremony, Mr. Ferran Falcó, which is the Vice Minister of Territory and Sustainability of the Catalan government. Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome all of you to Catalonia. Just a few words to say thank you. Thank you for letting us host this important meeting, a meeting for the present, but above all, for the future. A meeting that makes us look beyond and paints a smart future for our society. The government of Catalonia and myself, in the name of the Minister for Territory, would like to express our thanks to the European Commission and the Cartogràfic and Geològic Institute of Catalonia, especially its director, Jaume Miranda, the Executive Director of the European Environment Agency, and the Vice Secretary of the Ministry of Public Works for organizing this encounter. We should congratulate ourselves for envisaging this powerful European connection in the use of geographical data applied of the environment. In Europe, we live in a common space applied to the environment. And it's good for governments and public authorities to have a common spatial database at disposal. Coordination and cooperation between government bodies and at all levels, operational, legal, and technical. This is also what Europe means. Debate and the exchange of information, working information, information that is comparable and which requires study, and the necessary coordination between states in order to work on the major topics affecting us. These are today's burning issues in the European Union, and for the reason we must work on this area of Inspire. Information about hydrography, types of land cover and land use, different habitats, infrastructures, buildings, and natural risks is the basis to provide strategic diagnosis for a sustainable growth of the competitiveness of the European economy. We must coordinate our efforts. Think about the latest natural disasters that have occurred in Europe. Natural phenomena that, let's remember, don't always stay within specific state boundaries. And we must foresee what could happen in the future. For this reason, we are promoting the implementation of the Inspiring Directive, the implementation of the Cartographic Plan of Catalonia, and the Spatial Data Infrastructure of Catalonia. We need to develop the European Directive to standardize spatial data. This standardization will serve as the foundation for the economy of the future, the sharing economy based on knowledge and environmental efficiency, a new model that is already producing its first results. However, data standardization rather than being sometimes presented as an obstacle, should become a flexible bridge to integrate different data. We are talking about big data, the cornerstone for marketing and the business system of the future. And also, among other things, the driverless cars of the future, which must also be standardized. I'm using the word future a great deal, but the future is already here. We are already in the third industrial revolution, as described by renowned Jeremy Rifkin. Just last week, Rifkin gave a lecture in Catalonia. He's one of the thinkers behind the sharing economy, and for some time he has been predicting the free sharing of knowledge. He talks about smart networks, he talks about knowledge transmission as a foundation based on cooperation. And all of this links directly to the European project. We are walking together towards a smart Europe. Many thanks and welcome to Catalonia, welcome to Barcelona.
And this opening ceremony has come to an end. I would like to thank to all the speakers and authorities, and especially to you, the Inspire community. And now we will move, if you wish, to the floor -1 downstairs for the technical exhibition opening and to have lunch. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you.